Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl TC, and today I am here with a very, very special guest. And the purpose of this video is just to shine light on the AIDS disease as well as HIV, on a lot that's going to come out of this video and a lot that some people don't know. I'm LaChele, and she and I are just going to have a conversation, and you're just going to be part of it. So enjoy today's moment. You and I always discuss how my dad died. And it's something that you and I have only discussed. And it's not something up until now that I felt that anybody else needed to know. 42, I feel like now's the time, especially with the disease going on in our country. And even as in 2016, when medical advances are so far in advance, but this disease is still around. And so I just wanted to shine light and give our testimony in hopes that it'll help somebody else in their walk, if they're going through the same thing, just to shine some light. So I just wanted to talk to you about my dad. For those of you that don't know, my father, LaChele Gandy, passed away from AIDS in 1989, and here we are 28 years later telling our testimony. So I just wanted to shed some light on it, and of course there'll probably be tears in this video, but nevertheless we just wanted to talk about it. So you guys are no longer here. It's just mom and daughter having a conversation. So tell me a little bit about you and my dad when you first started dating.
Well, your dad and I, we met the summer of 1968, and how that came about. Your uncle, Ernie, who is now my pastor, brother-in-law, he actually started this choir, community choir called Voices of Deliverance. And of course, I was always, with, your Auntie Doris and him, going out, and we, we would actually everywhere they went. So every Monday night it was rehearsal. So his choir rehearsal this particular night, and I didn't even realize that your dad then was actually in the choir. So I went to the rehearsal.
Were you singing?
No, I was just I just wanted to be with them, and I rode along. I was like their ride along. Okay. So after getting there, I saw this cute guy, and I'm like, I asked, your not then uncle, but I asked, Ernie, who is this guy? And so he said, oh, I'll have to get you his name. And so then the following Monday night, we exchanged names. Not that we were starting to date or anything, but we were just talking.
So you just exchanged names?
We just exchanged, just names then. And then the next Monday I told, and I didn't go, so I told Ernie, I said, can you get his phone number for me? So he's got his number, and we started talking, and as a 13. I was only 13 and actually when we started dating, I was 13, he was 15.
Oh wow.
Right.
I can't imagine Jasmine dating anybody right now.
Right. And I thought about that when she was, we were talking about that. But anyways, yes, I was only 13. And so then after that, we spawned this conversation. So we would talk on the phone, and then he never did ask, I guess, back then, you always ask, do you want to go with me? And that was the word. I'm like, sure. So of course I was excited.
Where were you going?
To choir rehearsals and to the church events. That's all we did. So we met up at the councils, and then we started talking. And
did mother know about it?
She did. Yes, your grandmother did know. And then she was fine.
At 13.
At 13, we started dating.
Okay. And so then after then you started going together. And
right.
Then how far from then was the engagement?
Well, we dated from 1968, and then we were engaged in 1973.
Okay.
So that would have put me probably like right about 19.
Wow.
Yes.
So you were 19, he was 21?
He was going on 21, right.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, did you see that was there any sign that he was gay or down low or anything?
No, I think we can, probably get later on in the conversation, probably, I could probably say now I would probably know. But then I think I was just really naive, and really during that time, and I wouldn't say that I was sheltered, but, being in church all of your lives, it was like, oh my God, because from where we came, there was no dating, there was no holding hands, there was none of that, so if you were to be in a relationship, for us, it was like, well, you need to be married. So then during that time, the signs were not there. I hear now later on in life that, somebody will say, oh, well, I tried to tell you. I don't remember hearing any of that,
And one of the things that we talked about, or that I talked about in my last moment, was oftentimes when you're young, you plan this big wedding and you have all your hopes and dreams, and you just stick whomever it is in that spot of a groom.
Exactly.
And you get caught up sometimes.
Well, I do remember that, because your grandmother now, when I turned like 14, she told me, she said, I want you to go get a pen and some paper. I'm going to now actually give you all the details that I want to happen for your wedding. And this is even before he even asked me to marry him.
So it wasn't you that necessarily even planned this big wedding. It
was... Right. Your grandmother planned my wedding. Yes. She put my wedding together when I was like 14.
Wow. And then, so after you dated, of course, you got engaged. What was your engagement like?
Actually,
how did he pop the question? Where were you? Set us up.
Well, okay, I do remember, we were I take that back. We were at his mother's, and so we kind of talked about it a little bit. Ours was more always on the phone. So he popped the question on the phone and said that he wanted to marry me. So it wasn't like, you see, today's time, there was not a need, like he said, he asked, my mom, if he could marry me. And there was no need. It was probably on the phone that we talked about it. And he was just so excited, that we started putting the plans together. And we went through a 6-month, engagement. And it wasn't long, so it wasn't one of those ones, take me to Paris, take me somewhere, let's just have, fun. I'm going to, pop the question and we're going to have this great time. It was on the phone.
Wow. So was he involved in planning the wedding?
From beginning to end. I mean, I gave him the details that your grandmother had put together. And he just wanted to, make sure that, everything was in order. But pretty much everything that I wanted, everybody that was in the wedding, I put him there.
And was it a small wedding?
Actually, what your grandmother put together, I had actually over close to 70 people in my wedding party. Wow. Yeah, so there was the 8 bridesmaids, the 8 junior bridesmaids, the junior bride and groom. It was, I must say, that even our pastor who has gone on said that our wedding should have been televised. After the wedding,
were you honeymooners? Did you at least?
Well, here's the thing. So we really didn't go on a honeymoon. We went to, I believe the hotel now, it's the Marriott. We went to Palo Alto. It was called the Duffy Hotel. And so we spent like 3 days there.
Oh, that's a big thing.
We spent 3 days. And of course, yes, I was a virgin when we got married. So the wedding night, it was very exciting. I must admit, it was very exciting. Enjoyed our wedding night.
Immensely, because your eyes are glazed over.
I must admit, during that time, like I said, as I stated, I was a virgin when we got married. So it wasn't until after we got home, and things started to really warm up, and
so you consummated your wedding. You can talk freely.
Right, and I'm talking freely. And so I do remember we lived in Pacifica, and I worked at Bank of America. And during that time, every Friday, you would get like an hour and a half. He worked the night shift, and I worked the day shift. And I would come home on Fridays because I had an hour and a half. This is how it was well worth it. That was my lunch break,
So he was your lunch break.
He was definitely my lunch break. Okay, so let's just home and and get that. It wasn't even a quickie, so to me, an hour and a half was good. So I shower back up and go back to work, and I was kind of came back with a smile on my face.
Right.
So that right there, it was great. It was great.
And did he try anal sex then or no?
No.
Okay.
There was no anal sex. I mean, at some point, now that I go back, I mean, I think there was some. I'm not sure which way he was going, but he made it there. He got there, but then it was probably not even 2 weeks later. Your grandmother, my mom, lived around the corner. And so I would go to her house, after I got off work. And this particular day, she looked at me. She said, "You're pregnant." I said,
Were you on birth control? Or?
No birth control. We've never. She said, "Yes, you're pregnant." And I said, "You think so?" She said, "You're pregnant." And sure enough.
Well, I think after 12 kids, she would know.
Right. And sure enough, I was pregnant.
Wow.
So then after that, and this was we had married March of 94, March 2nd. And you were born December 1st. Believe it or not, sex really kind of stopped for me. Mm-hmm. Didn't know why. But one of the things that I did talk to him about is that I did not want to be on birth control. I have never used any type of birth control. Contraceptives. I've never done that. The only thing that I did, we discussed this, and this was right after I got pregnant. I did tell him that, you know what, I just don't want to be on any birth control pills. So I think what we're going to practice and do sex a different way. So it wasn't so much of the intercourse and the vaginal and all of that.
So it was more oral.
It was more oral, and him making sure that I was always satisfied. And to believe it or not, it was just him doing the oral. Okay. Which he was great. Right. And as you stated before, Mommy, how would you know since you only had the one? Right. Okay. So he was great to me.
Gotcha. And so then, of course, after I was born, and what I do remember most about my dad is he was always very hands-on with me, very caring for me. What was life like for you after I was born?
For me, I was very excited. As you know, I was very hands-on as well. It was just that you were a part of something that I know that you were God's gift to me. And I think, and I shouldn't even say I know for a fact that the Lord knew exactly what was going to happen, because only He was the one that knew what was going to happen later in life. Right. And I know that He blessed me with a guardian angel, and that was you. Your dad was actually, and I could truly say he wasn't, and you probably later on in life, you found out you were only a baby then, but we never argued in front of you. I mean, it wasn't like, a bad discussion of us sitting down and talking about, him preparing, that he was leaving. He never talked about it. It was just, when he decided, that he was leaving, and I could remember to this day, sitting on our couch, and he just came and, he just said, "Well, I'm leaving." And I said, "What do you mean you're leaving?" He said, "Well, I just think we got married too young, and, I just don't want to be, here right now. I just need to get, some things together." And believe it or not, I was crying the river of Jordan. I mean, I was crying so hard, begging him and pleading, "Please don't leave us. Please don't leave us." And I remember, and this is why I know for a true fact that God blessed me with a guardian angel, because the day that he was leaving, as a matter of fact, was the evening that my nephew, and I didn't even realize that he was the one that came to pick him up. And he just told me, he packed his stuff and, getting ready to walk out the door. And you were laying, on my lap. And this was in 1976. So this is leading up to, like I said, he never talked about it. He was a great guy. I mean, you know, like you said, he was hands-on with you. I can go out of town. He would get your hair done. You know, he would dress you. You stayed dressed, you know. And so I was really confused as to us not having a conversation, you know, anything going on. He didn't lead up to it as to, you know, the only reason why he said, you know, we were young, he didn't get a chance to, you know, do anything, you know, was because we started out. So for me, I just didn't understand. So every morning he would take you to daycare, you know, and so when he did take you, you know, he would write your name. He was the one that would fix your lunch, write your name, you know, when you were going to daycare. And so this particular time, and he left that evening, and you were laying on my lap, and so, and crying, it was bad, you know. And I will never forget, you were laying on my lap, and I picked you up, and you looked at me, and you took your little hands, and you put your hand on the back of my back and said, "Mommy, don't cry. It's going to be okay." And a 2-year-old, I knew that was nobody but God, and I still didn't understand. And it wasn't until probably and your grandmother didn't say anything, but it was about 3 weeks later when she came to the house and she looked at me and she said, because she knew your dad, how neat he wrote your name on your lunch bag. And she looked at me, she said, "Terrell's not here, huh?" And I lost it.
People say, oh, they just woke up and made a decision that they wanted to leave. But obviously, he was going through a lot that nobody knew. So were you guys arguing at that time? Because I don't remember any arguments.
No argument. He was, like I said, it was like, you know, because we didn't argue, so it wasn't like, I'm just going to make her mad, you know, so I could leave. It wasn't that, you know, it was like, he just left. He was gone, you know. And so this was from 76 until about the beginning of the year, probably about the mid of 77, you know, that he left, you know, and, you know, he would call, you know, and I think he had moved to Southern California. He would call to see how you were doing. And for people to talk about, we never talked about or discussed child support. We never talked about, you know, him sending you money, because he always, if it wasn't a bag, you know, you would get in the mail, you know, something he was always doing, you know. And then I remember that year when he left, as a matter of fact, no, when he left in, he was at Bank of America. He worked at Bank of America. And I remember going to the bank where he worked, you know, and I looked at him and I said, "I can't believe that you're gone," you know. And so he was, you know, really wanting me to leave. And this is what I'm saying, "I just need for you to leave. You know, I'm at work. And I said, "I know, but I just really wanted to, you know, can we talk?" It was really just silent. He didn't want to talk about it. You know, he said he wasn't coming back. So at that point, I just had to leave it alone.
So then the times when he would call, was there arguing then? Because like I said, I don't ever remember.
He barely, you know, the conversations, you know, that when he did call, it was that, you know, "I'm just calling to see how you and Tiffany are doing." And one of the things, you know, like I told him, I said, "We're fine. You know, we're fine." He would say, you know, "Well, I'm going to send her something," you know, and was really bad that this time, I think it was more difficult because it was almost during Christmas time, you know, the first time he left, you know, and it was almost during the holidays. And so that meant that I was going to be alone with you for the holidays. Not so because we have family, but still, you know, that was your dad, you know. So after that, you know, this went on, and it wasn't where, you know, he would call like just every day, you know. It wasn't that. It was just when he did call, you know, I would say, "She's fine, you know, she's good, we're good," you know. And I think this is where I had to really start to, you know, gather my strength for you, you know. And I think with that, and I don't think, you know, with you not recognizing, I think only one time I remember when you said, "Where's Daddy?" One time, you know, and then after that, you were always silent. You know, it wasn't like, "I miss my daddy. Where is he? Can you call him?" It wasn't that. So like I said, I knew from beginning to end that it was no God that kept us, you know, me as a single mom and your mom, you know. And it was just, to me, now as I go back, and I'm glad we are having this conversation, because now it's allowing me to have a conversation with my daughter, you know, that we've never shared. You know, we've never shared. We talk about it amongst ourselves, but never in depth.
Right.
You know, so this is what I'm appreciating most. Yeah. Because when he came back in 78, I just knew that, we were coming. And what was really sad now that I look back, we never sat down to talk about, now that you're back, what happened?
So did you just open the door and he was
Yes,
there, or
I just right. It was just like, well, he called and says, you know what, I'm gonna come back. And I got excited. Okay, well, he's coming back. But the one thing that when he did come back, it still wasn't because of sex. It wasn't any of that. And because we were still doing the same thing. It was still the oral.
And then plus you were younger and trying to figure out. Hold on, I'm closing the door. Too. So, and it wasn't like it was marriage counseling back then to where you would know to go and seek wise counsel from somebody. So you're saying he just called and
he just called and said, he said, you know what, I'm going to come home. So he came back, and this went on from let's see, 7, because that's when he did come back. So that was 78. And then because this was the second time. Then he left again. So he left again in 78, and really we had less conversation. Still, again, like I said, he would send money, for you, like I said, clothes, he didn't visit, and I think that's the time he moved to Southern California, because he didn't visit, he was gone, And then
did he still call?
He was still calling every now and then.
Okay.
Every now and then we'd have conversations, but it wasn't to where, I was could say that I missed him, because now I had gotten used to, okay, fine, he's gone, But then when he decided to come back, and I think mine was more, and I look back now, mine was more of, now I don't have to be embarrassed, now he's back, okay, now I have, Tiffany's dad, he's back, and that was okay.
When he came back, you said that there was no conversation, and so did he just come back and life was great after that, or what happened?
It wasn't that it was great. When he came back, that time, we just act as normal, not so much as a husband and wife, but more so friends. And it was where I look back now, and I do really wish that, I think at that point, if we would have had the conversation, I probably would have gotten more in depth, but I'm not sure, because I think his personality, he wasn't really a communicator. So he probably still wouldn't have talked about it. And not until later on, where I found out more about his life. I found out more, later on.
When he was gone, looking in from other people, did they ask where he was, or
what? And
did they just assume he was on vacation?
No, which is really strange. They knew that we were separated, at least family members and around, because the outsiders. Nobody really. It amazes me that nobody talked about it. And it's like, well, what happened to you and Terrell? What happened? So it was never discussed. It was like, we're separated. And now that you say that, no questions asked. Not his family, not to say, the one thing that I do appreciate his, your grandmother, Mom Gandy, one of the things that he did share with me later on is that the one thing that she told him, I don't care how many times you leave, but you better not ever hurt Tiffany and LaChele, which is one of the things that he did hurt me.
Right.
But again, I do appreciate that, and so that went from 78 until 80,
okay,
to 1980.
That he was gone.
He
was gone for 2 years. And I know when I was going through my first divorce, people from everywhere were in our business trying to figure out what happened. So it's also telling of the times that no one asked.
Exactly.
Even took him aside and was like, what are you doing?
No one, not, and it just, I'm amazed at that, like I said, back then, and this was like 78. There was no questions, nobody coming to me, not even to, say, I'm sorry, I heard that nothing. Dead silence. Dead silence. And that was, until about 1980 when he decided to come back.
Again.
Again.
So you let him back
To
again.
stay. Yep.
And this time you said it was to stay. What was life like then?
Now, not that we talked about it, and this is where leading up to me not knowing where God was taking me from that point until, again, later on, we will talk about that. But it was in 1980, and this I remember like it was yesterday, when he finally came and said, you know what, I am really, really going to stay this time. I'm not going to leave. And I said to him, this is the conversation that we finally had, not to talk about what happened, who were you with. I never even questioned. I never asked him, who were you seeing? Were you dating? That never even came up.
Did you think about it?
No.
Okay.
But what I said to him was, this time, you and I will no longer act as husband and wife. We're going to be friends, and you're coming back to be Tiffany's dad. Not my husband, but Tiffany's father. He agreed to that. So during that whole entire almost 6 years, when we went through, it was just church. Again, you watched us for almost 6 years. Well, even during that time, even up from 86 and then the 2.5 years when he was ill, we never argued in front of you.
Right.
We never had conversations like that. And what I will say about your dad, and I will say it, and he's gone, he was a wonderful guy. He was my friend. And I know that he did love me, but he didn't love me as me being his wife. I was his friend. And that part, and I tell anybody, I loved him for that. And I look back now, the 6 years, when he was with us. And the one thing that I remember those 5 years, and during that time, is that from 80, we went to church, never argued. He was a provider, never squandered his money, never made sure that we were taken care of. And that's when I look back now, I'm like, I never had to ask him for child support. That was never a question. It was never, it never came up, because of who he was. And not only did family love him, but outsiders love this guy to death, and that's why I say now I love people to life, and people loved him to life,
Right.
So that went on from 1980. And I do remember, and I said, and we weren't having sex. Never knew, but I just cannot, now that I keep on, and I look at it, and I said, and I told him I can't do this right now.
Yes, you can. One thing that I remember is just the laughter. We had fun in our house. You can do it.
Okay. We did, but I just remember, the end of 1985, I told him, and I said, you know what? The only reason why I'm going to say that I want this is because I think I want another child. And this was at the end of 1985. And I know it's, like I said, God has always been our guardian angels. He was there, not even, turning the age that you were, and I will never forget. And I said, well, you know what? How about we have another child? When that we did discuss it, and it was just like, when he said, are you sure? And I know to this day, it was nobody but God, because we already know what would have taken place.
Right.
And then in
so pause there. When you wanted another child, you were still not living as husband and wife. You
Right.
were living as friends.
Right.
But you wanted to come together for that.
For a child.
Okay.
Not as a husband and wife, it was just for a child. Because again, I still had never been, and I know that I probably could have had 5 or 6 children, because this is who the Jacob blood were very fertile,
Very.
So that did not happen. And we know the
Did
reasons
it not
why.
happen because you weren't trying, or
We didn't try. It would just, I mean, it would be like we would be in the bed together. I still was sleeping. We came together as friends, but we were sleeping in the same bed. He didn't touch me unless I wanted to be touched. Whatever. It was like, okay, fine, I need a quick fix. And down he went. And he never ever said to me one time, "What about me?" Never, not one time. And again, all praises to God.
right?
So that was in the end of 85, and then we start the year 86.
So in 85, you wanted a child, but it obviously didn't happen. Were you still, and you weren't necessarily trying to have a child? So did that thought just, you're like, oh well,
It went away.
it went away?
It went
Praise
away.
God.
It went away. It really did. And it never bothered me again. It didn't faze me to keep on saying how, I'm sorry, some women say, well, if I just have a child, make things better. Not that things were, like I said, it wasn't bad, because we had, like you said, nice times. We had, family, friends, we laughed, we talked, so never that, so it wasn't that. It's just that the thought went away.
Okay. So you said in 86. Well, at this point, it's been over 10 years or 12 years. So did you have any idea then that he was on the down low?
No.
So still no idea.
No.
Okay, so now you're going through to 86. Okay, so the second time he left there, so the second
around August, we were going to rehearsal. We had gone somewhere, and your Uncle Ernie, we were all in the car together. And when we came back, and it had to be around August, because your dad said to me, "Shell, I haven't been feeling too good." And I would remember, and I don't know why, and I said, "Well, I'm glad. Well, you know what? You need to go to the doctor and see how you're doing. I'm sure you're fine, because the one thing I don't have to worry about, because we've been back together since 1980, is you having AIDS." And it just out of the blue, he said, "Why would you say that?" And I said, "Because of course we've been back together since 1980. I know, you don't have to worry about that." So
when you said that, you still had no clue.
I did not. You know what? I don't know if I had a clue, or if it started to kind of like, okay, we've been back since 1980, and now AIDS is coming out, and now they're talking about it. The reason why I said it is because, well, I'm thinking to myself, it can't be that, because we've been back together since 1980. So naive, not thinking about him being on the down low, not thinking about him. I'm wondering if he was with someone.
Right, and back then, AIDS was, you heard of people having it, but it was almost like, oh, they have a cold, and then it progressed to something different. And we found out later all the ways that you can get it, but back then it was like, okay, well, I know I don't have to worry about that.
And that's why I said, and he said, you know what? And I don't even know if he answered to that, but I think what he felt that, well, good and well, it's not that, So I said, well, that's why I said, go and have yourself checked. Going through to 86, things, as a matter of fact, work for a gynecologist. So your cousins work with her, and they had kind of been, talking about, Uncle Terrell doesn't look right. I wonder if Auntie Shell, because he looks like he have AIDS. Now they're having all this conversation without me, So I discovered that, I had to then say to them, and I told Auntie Doris, and I said, you really need to have your daughters, your daughter and your niece, they need to really stop talking so much. Because what I did, I ended up, your dad went to the hospital. He had a checkup. This was on a Thursday. He came home, and he did tell me that was September, I want to say around to the first week in September. And he came home, and he said, and this is after he said that he would go, I told him, you need to go get a checkup, see what's wrong since you're not feeling good. When he went, and then he came home that Thursday, what he was told to do was to come home and to tell me that he had been, and this is from the hospital. He went down to Kaiser in down our way down, because we were in San Carlos, so he went to Kaiser down in the South Bay. Told him that he needed to come home talked to his wife that he had been diagnosed with AIDS. So he was told to come home, and then the words that he said to me was, "You can tell your family or your sister that all of my tests are negative." So I said, okay, well, thank God. So I get on the phone, I call Auntie Doris, and I said, I'm going to give you these words because now Terrell, he went to the doctor, his test results came back. All of his tests came back negative. Tell your daughter and your talking niece that he does not have AIDS. And I slammed the phone in her face. This was Thursday. And then that Sunday at church, he was up directing the choir. And he almost fainted. So the very person that I slammed the phone in her face was that we left the church, we went to her house, and at that point I knew that he had been told something because he said to me, just let me breathe in a bag. So Auntie Doris got him a bag.
I remember that.
Yes, and so what he said to me is that the only reason why I'm so shaky, I don't need to go to the hospital. I wanted to stay awake and I took some Vibrams. And I said, no, you're going. So now we're going to get into the disease. So Auntie Doris and I, we took him to Presbyterian Hospital. And because they didn't have any of his records, they began to told him that they would, we would go ahead and take him through the emergency. We would check everything out. He took his clothes off, and unbeknownst to me, Auntie Doris and I was just in total shock. He had on 2 shirts. He had on 2 pair of pants. And when he took his clothes off, literally, Auntie Doris and I, we were like in total shock. So what they said, asked the doctor, I said, what do you think it is? And so he said, well, he could be suffering from malnutrition. That's when I came up and says, well, you know what? I told Auntie Doris, I'm going to start really cooking for him. Because see, when mother don't cook, he just don't eat. This is crazy. This is ridiculous. I am really going to start feeding him. So then he says, well, the doctor said, yeah, it's meningitis. And, that's what it probably is, but not until we get his records back. We won't know. But this is what we think it is. It could be, a number of things. But right now, it looks like he could be meningitis. He could be malnutrition. And I'm like, okay.
You're like, woo, that sounds better than AIDS.
It sounded really good. So I said, thank you, Jesus, So then I go home. And then this was that Sunday. So Monday, I hadn't heard anything. Tuesday, I got a talk.
Did he stay at the hospital?
He stayed at the hospital. He stayed at the hospital. That Tuesday, and I went up there. As a matter of fact, I came home Sunday. I went up there. I took some clothes because they told me he's probably going to be here for a while. I took some clothes, and and I did not come home. I stayed at the hospital with him for almost 3 weeks. The Tuesday, when they told me that, and that was your grandmother's doctor, that the doctor wanted to see me. It was your grandmother's doctor as well. Told me that he wanted to talk to me and I need for you to go with me. And so your grandmother said, well, I'm going to go in with you. I said, no. I said, because I need for Ernie to go because there may be some things I may not understand and he'll understand. So then we go in that afternoon, sitting across this huge conference table. And the doctor, I think it was 2 doctors and Uncle Ernie and myself. And this doctor sitting across the table with his hands looking like, how am I going to tell this woman this? And so he looked at me and he waited probably about maybe 3 minutes or so. And he looked at me and said, LaChele, he said, have you talked to Terrell, your husband? And I said, well, no. I said, Ernie and I, we came in because we got the message. I got the message that you wanted to speak with me about, him. And so he took a breath and he said, he went to the doctor on Thursday. And he came home. Did he say anything? What did he say to you? And I said, well, thank goodness he came home and said, all of his test results were negative. And so he did exactly what you did. He did like this. And he said, I'm so sorry. He said, I'm so really sorry. He said, your husband have 6 months to a year. He's been diagnosed with AIDS.